Hello, and thank you for joining us for another installment of our Front Office of the Future series. Welcome to today's webinar, Using Technology to Increase Revenue in an Uncertain Economy. I'm Adam Rubenfire, a content manager at Phreesia, and I'll be moderating today's presentation. Today, we'll discuss how to create a consumer-centric digital-first experience that increases appointment volume for new and existing patients, promotes your services, and minimizes uncollected payments. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly share some housekeeping notes. Attendees can submit questions at any time using the Q&A widget at the top left-hand corner of your screen, and I'll ask as many questions as time allows. In the resource widget on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll find a one-page overview of Phreesia, a blog about how to get paid faster and more consistently, and a white paper about how to become the go-to destination for care in your community. We're also including replay links for our two most recent Front Office of the Future webinars. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the help widget as a question mark icon and covers common issues. Since it's always one of the most frequently asked questions, this session is being recorded and you'll receive a link by the end of the week. Now, our session today is going to start with a quick introduction of our guests and Phreesia. Then we'll discuss strategies and tools that you can use to fill every slot in your schedule, increase revenue per visit, and optimize collections. Finally, we'll spend the majority of our time in a panel discussion with our guests. Now, speaking of our guests, I'm thrilled to introduce them. Scott Goss is Chief Operating Officer at Forefront Dermatology, a position he has served in since 2021. As a seasoned healthcare executive with over 20 plus years of experience, Scott has held leadership positions within healthcare services, device, and technology companies. Rodney Smith is Practice Administrator of Physicians Care Group of West Georgia, a multi-specialty practice. He joined the organization after past work in the insurance service and retail industries. We're thrilled to have you both here today. Thanks for joining us, Rodney and Scott.
Thanks for having us.
All right, let's get into it. So just a few brief words about Phreesia. Phreesia is we're guided by our mission of creating a better, more engaging healthcare experience for patients, providers, and staff. At over 120 million patient visits annually, that's over 1 in 10 visits across the US, our digital platform helps healthcare organizations enhance the patient experience, drive efficiency, and improve healthcare outcomes. We've got real-time integrations with all the leading EHRs and registration, scheduling, and billing systems. We're a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange, and we've been rated #1 in patient intake management by the Research and Insights firm's KLAS 4 years in a row. Our security and privacy efforts are recognized with the industry's top certifications. Now, at any point during the webinar, if you're curious about how Phreesia can help you capture more revenue, fill empty slots on your schedule, or promote your services, please fill out the Request a Consultation form using the drop-down on the right-hand side of your screen. We'd love to discuss how we can support you. Let's get into our presentation. I'm sure I won't be surprising anyone on this webinar when I share the news that there's economic uncertainty ahead of us. Inflation, high interest rates, and stress on the banking system are slowing economic growth. And healthcare organizations need to consider how they can guard against the impact on their finances. To secure revenue, we believe that healthcare organizations need to carefully consider how they promote their services, collect payments, and fill their schedule. So patient outreach is one important way you can encourage appointments and drive revenue. Today, we're going to go over 2 ways you can do that, through email and during the intake process. And we'll share how you can quickly convert patient interest into booked appointments. So let's start with email. Most of us are familiar with sending patients emails to encourage them to seek care. But how can you ensure your outreach is effective? Here at Phreesia, our clinical content team spends a lot of time creating templates that are based on motivational science and encourage patients to seek care, from everything to preventive care like a flu shot clinic to ancillary and aesthetic services like Botox, which you can see in the example on screen. Promoting ancillary, elective, and high revenue generating services is a great way for organizations to increase service utilization and ultimately increase revenue. Templates make it easy to quickly send messages, and many of our clients actually create their own custom templates to support their staff and make it easy for them to promote different services. But it's not just about the messaging, right? To be the most effective in your outreach, we believe it's critical to give patients the ability to raise their hand and seek care via a link that sends them to a self-scheduling screen or appointment request form, as you can see on this slide. But email is not the only way to do this. Well, email outreach is a great tool to drive utilization. One of the most effective, seamless ways to promote your services is to do so right within the digital intake process. Here, after patients fill out their demographic information and clinical info, they're prompted with content about an available service and can immediately either self-schedule or request an appointment without leaving the intake process. Not only is this convenient for patients, but there's a cost efficiency here. Staff didn't have to call them, the practice didn't have to mail them a postcard or other type of advertisement. Patients simply responded to a relevant promotion while they were registering for their visit, and the practice has now secured additional revenue. In this example, we're targeting all patients, but in the next slide, I'm just going to show you how we can automatically target patients based on the information they've shared with us during the intake process. With Phreesia, there are two major ways you can automatically engage patients without burdening staff. As we've shown, patients can be prompted during intake. We can segment that outreach and target patients with specific messaging based on their demographics, past appointments, medical conditions, or other information. This ensures that we're reaching out to the right patients at the right time during intake about services we think they'd be interested in. Alternatively, healthcare organizations can use information collected about patients during the intake process to automatically add them to promotional campaigns and send them an email after they've completed registration. This gives us the opportunity to send outreach at a specific time that might better align with their patient journey. Of course, it's possible to manually send to campaigns as needed, but these are two great ways to automate outreach so that your staff can focus on other tasks. And next, we're going to share how automation can help fill gaps in your schedule. So obviously, when you're filling every slot on your schedule, you're maximizing your revenue opportunity. But when patients cancel or no-show, it's hard to rebound and fill those gaps. An automated schedule management tool can help. Our tool, Appointment Accelerator, fills unexpected gaps in your schedule due to cancellations and rescheduled appointments, and moves high priority patients up in the schedule so they can see a provider more quickly. I'll briefly share how it works. When a patient cancels an appointment, Appointment Accelerator automatically identifies clinically relevant patients with upcoming appointments based on customizations designed by the healthcare organization. Then automatically sends those patients a text message offering them the opportunity to claim the earlier reopened appointment slot. You can actually see that on screen here. The first patient to reply gets the appointment. No waitlist signups, apps, portals, or staff work required. There's no waitlist. This tool can also reschedule patients if they no-show or are bumped, and can fill underutilized provider schedules by moving patients from an overbooked provider to a provider with more time on their schedule. Now, finally, it should come as no surprise to everyone that when you're collecting the money you're owed for your services, you're reducing bad debt and ultimately maximizing your revenue. But that's easier said than done. Many practices say they only expect to collect a fraction of a patient's balance, yet we spend a lot of time and money trying to do that. So a digital patient payment experience makes it easier for patients to pay. A recent Phreesia survey shows that patients want an online payment experience. 70% of patients told us that they would likely make payments online if they were given the option by their provider. So how do we build in steps that increase the likelihood that we're going to fully collect? Well, before the visit, eligibility and benefits verification is a crucial first step. Automated EMB verification means fewer denials and the opportunity to collect copays and deductibles even before the visit. Plus, when patients complete intake before the visit, you can take that opportunity to have them make a payment right then and there. Of course, we also want to make sure we have the ability to collect payment at the point of service in case there are any incidental charges or the patient simply wants to pay in the office. After the visit, there are also a number of great ways to collect. Patients can keep a card on file or enroll in automated payments. And at Phreesia, we support Apple Pay and Google Pay so that you can quickly check out without typing in your credit card. And you can also keep your patient's bill top of mind with regular automated payment reminders via email and text message to encourage them to pay their balance without burdening staff. And the more comfortable we can make patients feel in this process, the more likely we're going to be able to reliably collect on their balance. So when patients can set up payment plans digitally without speaking to staff, but within your parameters, by the way, they're better equipped to pay down their balance on a schedule that works for them, and they're less worried about disclosing their financial situation to staff. All of these features together have the aim of ensuring that practices are collecting payments as early and consistently as possible during the patient journey so that we aren't left with lingering balances. Right, let's hop right into our panel discussion. I'll just put our headshots up here for a bit to remind you who we've got on this fantastic panel, but I'm thrilled to jump into it. Audience, if you have questions, please submit them via the Q&A widget on the top left-hand corner of your screen. We'll get to as many as we have time for, and if we don't get to your question, we'll pass it on to our panelists and do our best to get you an answer. But I would love to start by learning about our panelists and their organizations. So I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit more about your organization, services, and the patient population you serve. Rodney, you want to go first?
I sure will. I'm in Georgia, of course, West Georgia, so just west of Atlanta. Our patient population is, predominantly going to be folks of the Medicare age. We only see adults. The providers here, it's a multi-specialty practice, so we're providing treatment for primary care, and then we're also have pulmonary, and we also have sleep medicine that docs are board certified in. We serve patients in Georgia and the most eastern parts of Alabama that are connected to us here.
Excellent. Thanks, Rodney. Scott, what about you?
So Forefront Dermatology is a medical group practice, and we focus on delivering and meeting the needs of our patients in general and surgical dermatology and aesthetic medicine. We're led by 240 plus board certified dermatologists, and we serve our patients across our 230 plus locations in 26 states and the District of Columbia.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. So I want to set the landscape for this discussion and talk about how you think about revenue growth at your organization. So tell me, when you think about growing revenue, what does that mean to you? How are you often doing that? And how does technology play a role in helping you generate new or additional revenue? Rodney, let's start with you.
So I think the way that we first came to Phreesia was that we were looking for an electronic platform to replace paper. We were tired of paper. Paper was inefficient. We weren't getting the right form signed. If a patient happened to not have a visit until July of the year, then we would simply have forgotten to get their initial paperwork signed. And so that was the reason that we got onto Phreesia. And then the fact that it collected money for us, so it was neat that that they would collect the payments, the co-pays as patient flow occurred inside the practice. But it didn't take us long to realize that somehow when patients were interacting with a pad at the time, now their phones and such, that they would make a conscious decision to set up a payment plan that we didn't even know existed. We just simply got a notification that we had a payment plan, and they were actually making the payments. And now with a card on file, it just continues to collect money, even though we're not having to call and dun the patient to get that money.
That's great. Sounds like a pleasant surprise. So, Rodney, it sounds like for you, collections are a big part of that. Scott, what about you? How are you growing revenue? How does technology play a role?
So dermatology itself is highly underserved. So the demand for our dermatology services generally in most of the markets we're in sort of greatly exceeds the supply. So, we're very focused, as you'd expect, on filling out as many of our providers' schedules as possible and up to the goals that they want to achieve. And so, we're very focused on trying to figure out how do we use technology along with, some of our human support, our telephony and scheduling operations to really drive and make sure that all of our schedules are full. And so we've really taken advantage of like the whole full stack of what Phreesia has to offer, for us to be able to do that. So be it self-scheduling, be it appointment accelerator, be it the intake part of the process and recommending services that patients may not be aware of, and also the health campaigns in getting patients in for preventative services that, based on their conditions, that they should be seen regularly, or bringing to their attention other services that they should be taking care of. So, technology plays a key role in our process of filling out our schedules for both our new and existing patients.
That's fantastic. And, Scott, I'll stay with you because I want to think about, you mentioned health campaigns, you mentioned driving people to book appointments. it's one thing to have a tool to do the scheduling. Do you believe that the experience itself, these kinds of tools are important to patients and play a role in helping you acquire and retain them?
So I think digital technology is here to stay. I think healthcare always tends to be a little bit of a late adopter. It's part of being in healthcare. But I think that healthcare now, and I think COVID probably drove a little bit more of that, as healthcare organizations really had to pivot quickly to think about digital and digital technologies to support, be it if it was, telehealth or other types of services. And so I think digital is really, it's part of healthcare today. And I absolutely think patients expect it from whatever healthcare service provider they work with. It is a channel that's really specific to maybe a set of targets, but I think that target audience is expanding greatly. We see adoption of all the different Phreesia tools, be it self-scheduling, intake, appointment accelerator, by all different age groups. So a lot of some of the resistance that you may get from your physicians or clinicians that you work with about, I'm in a rural town, or I'm in a place where people don't use technology. I just encourage you to think twice about that, because I think we've been pleasantly surprised at some of the places where we've deployed this technology at the level of engagement and the use of these technologies.
That's really interesting. And I think, Rodney, that's a great segue into the fact that you've mentioned that a lot of your patients are Medicare age. I mean, what do you find that it's natural that some people are not going to be comfortable. We know that that does happen, and we can do things as staff can help them with those things, whether it's like pads, as you mentioned, or other ways to work with them. But do you find that the experience is important to your patients, that they value that convenience?
I absolutely do. So there was a time in the beginning where we were genuinely concerned that part of our patient population wouldn't be able to fill things out. And there are people that can't fill out a pad, people that still don't have a smartphone, but their wives do. and now you've given us a way to allow their wives and their daughters to fill that information out for them. There's just not a segment of the population that come to our practice that we could point to and say, oh, well, that group doesn't use technology. Technology is everywhere right now. So it's not an issue. Did I mention that we're in Georgia, that we serve people in Alabama? And so even down here, we've learned how to use that technology.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting you mentioned that, Rodney, because what I think one of the things we think about is, because you're saving time, because your staff aren't doing that the intake manually, you do have time to help people who need that extra hand. And you mentioned that other people can do the registration for them, which is fascinating for all kinds of, I mean, when we talk to pediatrician offices, sometimes mom can't bring the kid in, but she can do the intake and grandma can take the kid in, or vice versa. There's all these kinds of different ways that helps. So I every day I find an interesting new scenario with that. So thank you for that, Rodney. One of the things that I want to talk about is no-shows. We know that no-shows can really have a hit on revenue. And I want to think about what we're doing to reduce no-shows and what we do to recall patients when they no-show. Rodney, I know you're using appointment reminders, right? Tell me a little bit about kind of how that's helped you reduce no-shows.
We are. So, and what happens on the appointment reminder that we're using through Phreesia, so it's either emails and or text that go to the patient, and we can schedule those so that they go out beforehand. But we've also got a reminder even the day of to let people know that, hey, don't forget, this is the day you have your appointment. And the reason for that is that, everybody's got a busy life. It doesn't matter if you're, working every day or you're retired, your life is full of activities, and we need these reminders. And so it's a two-way street too. So they communicate back to us, and we've got a little check mark by their name. We know that they have been notified and they've responded, and they've acknowledged that they're coming in the office. And if we don't have that, then we're sending out text messages manually from the front desk that morning to remind them about it, and even giving them telephone calls as a follow-up, but as the last resort. Our idea is to be as efficient as possible and not have to pick up that phone and call them.
And you're definitely calling less patients, right?
Oh,
Than you
yeah,
would be.
absolutely. Lots less.
Yeah. And it's worth noting that actually it's not only email and text now, we actually have voice calls as well, that will automatically, some practices have also been caught by surprise on that. They weren't, we send messages out about that kind of thing, but yeah, it's, we've had practices that said, oh, a patient got a call from Phreesia. Phreesia called you? Yeah, we do have voice calls now, that if a patient doesn't pick up the text message, doesn't respond to the email, that they will get a voice call. So, Scott, the other way we have gaps in the schedule is from cancellations. And if they happen too close, as we talked about, too close to the visit, we have trouble filling them. I want to talk about how you're filling, cancellations or reschedules and how that's affecting revenue. I know Appointment Accelerator is one way you've been doing that. And you've talked about how for some pretty important visit types that it can be really helpful. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So we started with Appointment Accelerator towards the end of last year, and it's been a really big success for us. Again, one of those things that I think when initially there's always some reluctance and hesitation around, what this will do to schedules, but the overall positive reception that we've had from our patients and our offices with the feature itself. I mean, it's truly really hands off. It absolutely, and it's configurable and you set it up. So for a patient who cancels, new patient, existing patient for a particular visit type, if that patient cancels, the system automatically sends out based upon what you configure to similar patients who have that same type of appointment. And it's a race to see whoever gets it first. And there's also a feature, if you're not the first one, that it tells you that don't worry, you're up next. And it's been a big success for us. We've been able to fill very successfully a lot of our cancellations. And I think as we talked about at the front end of this presentation, that's a really critically important thing for a lot of reasons. One is, as I mentioned, dermatology is very underserved. So we have lots of patients who are in need of care and want to get in sooner, and our ability to get in sooner in these types of instances is highly valued for our patients. I mean, on average, our Appointment Accelerator is allowing patients to get in 21 days earlier than their traditional, their typical appointment. So that's a really positive patient experience for them, and one that they probably feel, pretty happy about when they get that text notification. For our clinicians and our staff members, look, they go to work every day in anticipation of seeing what they've been scheduled for. And, we build the operation to be able to support what they're scheduled for. And so our ability to be able to fill that schedule to the best of our ability really creates a much better experience for them too. I mean, they're really, focused. They understand the imbalance and demand and supply, and they don't like empty schedules at all. That's what their gift is. That's what their specialty is. And they want to see, as many patients as they're set up to see. And so I think they really value, this capability and its ability to sort of make sure that that's happening and not actually draining their staff to be able to do that and make those calls, so their staff can stay focused on sort of the patient-focused activities that are happening in the clinic that day.
Yeah, I mean, and when we're talking about
and
dermatology,
maybe Adam, I forgot.
Please.
Yeah, I forgot. Sorry, Adam, for interrupting you. But you had mentioned, and I forgot to, so we do Mohs surgery in a subset of our offices, and similar to any other surgical procedure, Mohs surgery requires a heavier investment in staff to support that. And so we've actually been using Appointment Accelerator in some locations when we get last minute cancellations on Mohs surgery. Our ability to be able to fill that slot, and we've had a couple of successes recently where we've been able to do that. And that's critically important, again, from a sort of like, how do we optimize revenue? How do we kind of manage our way through some of the bigger challenges that we as healthcare service providers and companies are facing. And this is a great example of where, we've got an investment in a Mohs surgeon, a histology, and we're able to do that right on spot without any manual effort in it. So great outcomes. We're continue to be really excited about what it can do, and we're looking forward to trying out the bumps technology too next.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say, Scott. That with a surgery like most, people are concerned about their potential, the effects of their condition, and they want to get in as soon as possible and take care of it. And so it's a revenue standpoint, it's experience standpoint. It comes into whether we can retain patients because we're providing them with we were able to get you in, and that feels good. So I think that's fantastic. Thank you, Rodney. Anything to add? I know. I mean, frankly, if dermatology is underserved, primary care, we don't have enough primary care physicians in this country either.
I think
we don't have enough doctors, period.
That's right. I think what I would add is that I mean, I know that of the 240, did you say, Scott, of that many providers, I'm sure that they're all on the same page. Mine aren't always on the same page. So this is what I would say is that because they're not always on the same page and they always want their schedule handled with, specific instructions. And that's what's neat about Phreesia. They don't set you up and say, okay, it's going to work. I mean, we tested and anytime we've had an error or an issue because of how we were scheduling something, it always kind of went back to how we scheduled it. Well, we corrected how we were scheduling it so that we had the appointment accelerator acts like a computer. It does it the correct way every single time. And that's neat. I know that it corrects some errors that we may make, but there's another part of this too. And that is that say that you get someone that cancels in the afternoon and you've got that spot. And so maybe the medical assistant knows that they probably ought to get that thing filled, but they have to go in the room with another patient. By the time they get out of the room with that patient, that slot's filled. It's just the magic of behind the scenes. It just happens that quickly. And Scott's exactly right. It was a minimum effort on our part because all we did was recognize that someone had canceled. And then it was filled again with someone else. It really works.
And you didn't even have to recognize somebody was canceled. Appointment accelerator recognized
it recognized it. You're right. It does a great job.
Yeah. I mean, Rodney, I'd love to stay with you and just talk a little bit more about self-scheduling. I'm just curious how it's been adopted by your patients, and what you think its overall importance is to what you do. I know you've mentioned with pulmonology, it can be particularly helpful with that in your primary care physicians.
Yeah. So similar to exactly what Scott has said is that whenever the docs are in high demand, their schedules are just full. And if a patient were to call our office and ask to be put in with their provider, and in their mind, their provider is this one doctor that they've always seen, that's who they're going to ask for. And they're going to be told, well, it might be 30 days. It might be 90 days for some folks, just depending on the type of appointment that they're trying to get. But if they are sick and they're on their phone, on our website, through the magic of self-scheduling, they'll have an appointment today. We've just tailored that so that we can address the folks that are presenting as sick. Because I have that on pulmonary side, I have that for primary care. You get into a situation and you need to be seen right then and there, you can schedule the appointment. It works pretty flawlessly because, again, we've designed it that way to work that way. I don't have it set up so that you can get with your doctor that day. You might be with a mid-level provider, but it just takes care of the issue. And it's just like the patient doesn't have to have an argument with someone at the front desk about whether or not they've paid because they know they didn't pay. And so they just they go ahead and make a payment plan on the pad, that back in those days. Well, now it seems to be a similar thing. Well, I'll let this nurse practitioner see me because I'm sick, and now I can get an appointment with her today. They can see what time the appointment's going to be. They can pick which one they want, and it flows quite smoothly that way.
And you're making the best use of those mid-level the nurse practitioners or PAs, because you're filling their schedules that might not be
Exactly
filled.
right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And we try our best to preserve, spots for same day appointments on their schedules. It's just because things happen. It's especially on the primary care side of things. And so it really works out nice.
Scott, what about you? I know one of the things you've told me is you've added locations to your organization, but your appointment volume growth has actually come like from adding appointments at locations, right?
So yeah, I mean, so our self-scheduling for us has been, again, kind of going back to, we have a very strong, scheduling operation, and then we really wanted to be able to offer self-scheduling to those patients who really, that was the channel of which they wanted to be able to use to schedule it. They wanted that convenience of the 24/7, 365. And so we introduced self-scheduling, and we, as Rodney said, I mean, we very much allow self-scheduling to be used by each of their clinicians the way that they want to use it within their respective practices. So I think that configurability that Phreesia offers its clients and its clients within its clients is truly really important. And it really, I think, speaks to understanding that, each of these practices are made up of different clinicians who have different preferences and different ways in which they want to be scheduled, and accommodating that has been, I think, really important for us driving adoption of self-scheduling. And so, many of our patients who use self-scheduling will use it consistently. So once they start using it, that's the mode of scheduling that they want to use. And probably many patients are choosing to schedule with us because we have that option. And I mean, we've seen some really, really positive results in 2023 as I think our adoption has risen, and over from last quarter of 2022 to this quarter of 2023, we've seen about a 30% increase in self-scheduled visits per location. So while we've added locations, the number of visits per location has gone up by 30%. And then I think another really exciting thing for us is we've put two technologies together. So we ran a health campaign around annual skin exams for our patients who are due for their skin exams. And then we combined that with the ability to self-schedule. And our ability, putting those two together for those patients who are seeking it, in one of our more rural locations, we actually had about 120 self-scheduled visits in that one location itself during that 1 week period. So, again, I think that there are plenty of digital adopters out there. I think if you make it easy for them, if you remove the friction, they're certainly going to take advantage of that. And if it becomes too difficult for them, then they always have the option to try something different. But so far, we're pretty excited about it, and we continue to find ways to include it in our health campaigns and really drive more adoption across the whole practice. And we also integrate it into our messaging when patients do call and are on the phone waiting to possibly speak to someone to schedule an appointment. We also message them and let them know that this is another alternative for them if they don't want to wait to speak to someone. So definitely trying to get it in front of our patients and have them access it as easily as they can and when they want to.
That's fantastic. Just a couple more questions before we close today. You both have talked about staffing. We've got some questions around just staffing challenges. It's quite hard to hire folks right now for the front office. And I'm just curious, one of the questions we're kind of getting is, because you're automating some of these tasks, do you feel like your staff are spending more time, you're able to allocate your staff to more valuable tasks that bring in revenue? Scott, I can start with you on that.
So, I mean, I think we're able to create a much better environment and a much better workplace for our staff by allowing them to focus on the work that they find most interesting and most productive use of their skill sets. And so I think what we've really tried to do is take those types of activities that we can automate, be it if it's completing forms, scanning in forms, collecting copays, asking for, balances due. Those types of things are things that we'd love to be able to put in the patient's hands and have the patients take care of, and then put our staff who are trained and skilled to put their attention to the activities that can't be done through automation and technology, and require, for them to be present and for them to be able to be in front of the patient to do it. So I think we've also freed up some resources to do maybe introduce other types of services which are offered into our practice that maybe they wouldn't have had the time for previously because they were doing some of this other type of work. So overall, I think, when we partnered with Phreesia, it was always initially about how do we create better experiences for our patients and for our staff members. And so that continues to be our focus as we think about all of the different services we've added since starting with intake.
That's great. Rodney, what about you? I know you've talked to me about your staff quite a bit and how you're just trying to help them.
That's one of the things I think that has really been successful for us is that we're using payment assurance, I think is the name of the product, where we're actually we kind of pre-plan how we're going to do this each month and try and send out payment reminders in a way for people to make a payment instantly, via the email that they receive from us. They can turn right around and make a payment. And what that does is it takes away the collection call process. So we're not collectors, but by virtue of us letting people out of here without paying their full bill, we become collectors. And that's that payment assurance is really something that's been a great tool for us, because it's like a surprise. You send the emails out and the next morning you come in and you got an extra $6,000-7,000. Like, wow, how did that happen? And it plays a role too in people that have their credit card on file. Then it triggers them up. They know that this is coming, and it's something that just automatically comes out, and they've got that set up when the next payment will be. And so it's just something that it saves staff time. I don't have to have someone making phone calls and explaining why they have a bill to pay and this, that, and the other. But it also does this too. It's sort of funny. It triggers people to call and be apologetic, and they sort of tell us what's wrong with our statement process from time to time, because it's a great resource to have people calling us.
to give you feedback on
right.
your, okay. Well, hopefully at least they're paying their bills, even though they're doing that. But
they're paying that on the side over there.
Okay. Well, Rodney, I want to ask both you and Scott one more question, which is just if tomorrow an organization wants to start working to boost their revenue, they want to tomorrow start doing that, what's one piece of advice you'd give them to really start putting pen to paper and start putting a plan to work? Rodney?
Well, this is what I would say, and I think that it was mentioned earlier that maybe the medical community is late adopters, and I would definitely agree with that. But this is what patients expect. This is what people that pay their bills expect. They don't expect to go find a stamp in the drawer and lick it, an envelope, and mail something into an office. These days, they would rather just make a couple of clicks, the payment's done, and they can go and enjoy their life.
Yeah. Scott, what do you think?
So I'm going to offer two thoughts. So one is that I think it's really important to sort of understand the goal of what you're trying to have the technology do. So as it relates to revenue generation, are you looking for the technology itself to generate revenue? And we've talked about, things like self-scheduling, appointment accelerator, or are you looking for technology to enable your staff to, now have more time to support you in that revenue generation process? And so I think that, that's a really important thing to think about when you're looking at technology, because I think solutions like this can really achieve both, but figure out kind of which is the right approach for you to start with. I think the second thing that is really important is that technology itself really needs ownership. And I think, our success in a lot of the offices that we have is really driven by having great champions within our clinics, individuals who really feel passionate about creating great experiences for our patients and for their staff. And so having those champions, understanding what problem you're trying to solve with technology, and then having the ability to measure how you're doing against solving that and continually revisit it and ask yourselves, have you achieved your goal, or is there more to be, gone after? I think those two things to me would be things that I would think about and continue to think about as we get introduced to new technologies to bring into our offices and our practices.
Well said. Well, guys, that's all the time we have today. I want to thank both of you for joining us today. Audience, if we didn't get to your question in the chat, or if you have any questions about Phreesia, again, please don't hesitate to request a consultation using the form on the right-hand side of the screen. We'd love to be in touch. Scott, Rodney, fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing such great insights. And thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.